Today, we've got a very special guest for you this afternoon who, and in preparation of our fireside chat, we've prepared a question for the audience, one that many of us are already engaged in, but also we care about very much as Malaysians. What would you like to see most incorporated in the National Climate Change Bill? And leading the charge to put all your ideas into action, we'd like to welcome the Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, YB Nik Nazmi. Could I invite everyone to rise, please, for our national anthem as we welcome our distinguished guest of honor. Thank you, everyone. Please take your seats. As we welcome YB to our forum, we'd like to share our Unlocking Capital for Sustainability opening video with him, and also for the benefit of our delegates who have joined us for lunch. Please sit back and enjoy.
Leaders must lead. No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for the others to move first. There is simply no more time for that.
Thank you for your kind attention. Now, under his leadership as the Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, NRES, the country has seen significant progress in advancing sustainability. It's a great honor and pleasure to have him here today. And as we wait for a few minutes for everything to set up, could we shortly perhaps have a think about the question that we're going to be discussing in our fireside chat later this afternoon. As many of you know, one of the flagship policies that the ministry will be setting up in the next year or so is the National Climate Change Act. I think many of us in this room, from the large institutions, regulators, civic society, is following this policy very closely. We're following the legislation, we're following the developments of it, we're asking questions around how this will impact Malaysian businesses, how it would impact other policies, and how ultimately it will allow Malaysia to arrive at our climate targets and our commitments to the Paris Agreement. We're very excited to be speaking about this today. Now, YB, could I invite you on stage, please, to deliver your keynote this afternoon?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. A very good afternoon. Datin Azalina Adam, Ms. Jessica Chem, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be at this event today with so many distinguished guests as we gather for the third Malaysian edition of Unlocking Capital for Sustainability 2024. I'd like to thank the organizers for your kind invitation for this event, and I'm sure this event will grow from strength to strength. We just have 6 years to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And the UN officials, as we've seen just now, they've issued us a stark warning. In spite of positive strides in Asia, no single country is on track to meet them. At the current pace, it will take another 32 years for the region to achieve the 2030 agenda, assuming that we do not have other hurdles and bumps in the future. So the next 5 years will be pivotal to bridge the $1 trillion funding gap necessary for Asia to regain momentum. We must mobilize resources through clear policies, robust investment plans, and strategic partnerships. I'm honored to be part of this conversation hosted by Eco-Business in partnership with UN Environment Programme Finance Initiative that is taking place this year in 6 countries across Asia, and which convenes decision makers across society to discuss and strengthen responses to these urgent questions. In terms of my ministry's part in this equation, the government has been working hard to put together the right policies, roadmaps, and initiatives in place to decarbonize our economy, especially the hard-to-abate sectors without sacrificing growth and development. To that end, we are continuing to work on implementing our ambitious National Energy Transition Roadmap announced last year, where we have stated by 2050 we aim for 70% of our energy capacity to be from renewables. And among other things, we've taken the difficult decisions of working on our retargeting of subsidies, both in terms of the electricity sector and in terms of the diesel sector. My colleagues in the Economy Ministry are also putting together a bill on carbon capture and storage to be tabled in Parliament later this year. It is important to emphasize that CCUS technology, we are not looking at it as the solution, the only solution to our problems, but we are looking at it as one of the levers that we have in our journey towards decarbonizing our economy. And as mentioned, we are also committed to tabling a climate change bill in Parliament by next year. We have recently begun visiting states, speaking to local governments and authorities, as well as meeting the private sector and civil society in order to get the feedback of how the climate change bill will be formed. We have looked at how the other countries are doing it, the UK, Taiwan, and many other countries across the world, but we need a solution that can work in the Malaysian context. Recently, at the National Climate Action Council meeting chaired by the Prime Minister, we launched the National Decarbonisation Committee, of which I chair, and we will perhaps share a bit more detail in the fireside chat. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, SMEs are the backbone of our economy. Their collective efforts are crucial in ensuring that we can decarbonise fast enough to meet our national commitment to meet net zero by 2050. We know that sustainability-related discourses are taking root both locally and internationally. And as a result, many SMEs, which are part of the local as well as global supply chain, will be required to step up their ESG disclosures. And in this challenging economic landscape, we know that many are finding it difficult to build capabilities in understanding how to decarbonize, as well as how do we pursue sustainable development. It's an alphabet soup. It's something that I discovered when I joined the ministry. I think it took me some months in order to get all the various abbreviations right. And I'm sure that this is something that is faced by any SMEs in this sector. Most of them, unlike the big players, do not have chief sustainability officers to guide them. So recognizing this, the government, regulators, and private institutions have developed a wide range of tools to support SMEs in their sustainability reporting journey. For instance, the IESG initiative, which specifically caters to SMEs, is a crucial component of the new Industrial Master Plan 2030. I am encouraged to hear from the organizers that the first session of today's event brought together regulators, banks, and SMEs to discuss the best way forward in helping SMEs along in their sustainability journeys. I received feedback from the industry that initially a lot of banks made it difficult for them to pursue polluting projects, right? To set up a coal plant and so on and so forth. But at the same time, the so-called green financing initially was quite difficult to get. Right? So the banks were telling them, do something sustainable, but the financing for that was not that great. But I have been told that this is starting to change, and many Malaysian banks are starting to give enormous amounts of green financing, and that is what we hope, the support that we need for us to embark in this journey. We need to continue seeing conversations like this happen and to ensure that these partnerships go from talk to action. There's also a great need for us to ensure SMEs in East Malaysia, as well as the rural and remote areas of the peninsula, are also engaged and aided as needed. We have to get out of the KL bubble. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the key pillars towards achieving our national target of net zero in 2050 is our energy transition strategy. It has been almost a year since the NETR was launched, and today it is being overseen by Deputy Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Fadilah Yusof. But we are all working hand in hand, because we cannot achieve net zero, we cannot achieve our sustainability targets by working alone in silos. Whether we are talking about governments in the ministry, whether we are talking about ministries in the government, or whether we are talking about separating it across the government, the private sector, and civil society. We are today committed to halving Malaysia's coal fleet by 2035 and achieving a complete phase-out by 2044. We've already declared that there will be no new coal plants. And during the National Climate Change Action Council, it agreed last month to speed up on additional policies to support the plans such as the NIMP 2030, as well as the hydrogen economy and technology roadmap. There are many commercial opportunities offered by this transition, and I hope that the private sector can truly seize the opportunities and invest in this wider economic transformation for the country. It is also important for us to uphold the principles of social justice and ensure that the transition is a just and orderly one. We've already mentioned the need to empower SMEs. We must also realize that ensuring climate adaptation does not result in a fall of living standards, as this will be crucial to maintain public support for it. We've seen various challenging episodes for decarbonisation in elections, when there's a change of government in many parts of the world, even in the most developed countries. So communicating it and ensuring that everyone is in this together is a very crucial component as we go in this journey. Financing from developed countries is one part of the puzzle. It has been a very challenging part. We've always received many promises from the developed world, but in terms of cashing the check, that has been a major challenge for us. And this will be again a major focus for this year's COP29 in Azerbaijan. And Malaysia will continue to uphold the principle of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capability, based on the understanding that developed countries need to be held accountable to provide financing. The simple and short description of this is that they have been developing their economies on fossil fuels. They have been cutting down their forests for many, many years or centuries. They have been cutting down our forests and taking out our resources to industrialize and achieve their high level of living standards. And we cannot be expected to face this journey of decarbonization alone. We are not denying climate change, but we are saying that there has to be that just transition and a sense of responsibility from the developed world. Ironically, sometimes we get the leaders of the developed world that are being climate change deniers, not from the developing world. And I note that part of today's program, which took place in the morning, dwelt on energy transition and how we are going to finance it. This is a welcome development, as investing in infrastructure is something that the government cannot afford to go alone on. One of the calculations that we've had, the amount of investment needed for NETR to succeed can go as high as 1.2 trillion ringgit. So what we are doing at the government's part is to ensure that the frameworks, whether they are regulatory frameworks, whether it's the pricing signals, can work in tandem and to encourage that private sector investment. We've done it with the targeting of subsidies. Obviously, it's a long journey, but we've started that journey, and as a result, I like to say that one of my simple sort of ballpark KPI for me in the past when I was looking at energy was simply to, whenever I take a plane, to see how many solar panels are installed. And I can see that the impact has been tremendous over the past 1 year, simply because companies are expected to pay for higher tariffs when it comes to electricity. So when we talk about tripling and scaling up of renewable energy capacity in the country, that is what the government is committed to doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm heartened to see that this year's summit is considering different angles when delving into how companies can succeed in their sustainability journey. As we focus our attention on hardware, namely as well as the infrastructure, government mandates and regulations to drive our sustainability calculations and progress, what is also equally important is the software, the heart of corporate governance culture we want to instill in this country. Both the public and private sector must understand and work to support our sustainability journey. For the latter, the boards of companies play a critical role. They already oversee the company's strategic directions, its risk burdens, and their conduct. There is a great need moving forward for additional areas of concern like sustainability, mindfulness of carbon emissions, and environmental impacts to be added to their responsibilities. And more importantly, how can directors help their companies adapt and even profit as we transition? I'm glad to say that this topic is also on the agenda at this forum. It simply makes sense if businesses are to survive. There will be no profit at all if the world that we live in is destroyed due to the planetary crisis. But if all sectors of our society play our part, we can radically transform our way of life and economies for the better. We need to relook and question the basic assumptions that we've inherited for so long. For many, many years, the focus has always been about the quarterly profits, about the bottom line, for companies to be in the black. But we need to be in the green today, to look at how sustainability is central to our business. But it all boils down to something that's very simple and fundamental. And I quote a famous environmentalist, Spur, who said that, "I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. And I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we, lawyers and scientists, don't know how to do that." I will add accountants as well. But in conclusion, I would like to firmly restate the government's commitment to sustainable development, as well as our commitments under our NDCs that are part of the Paris Agreement. We cannot achieve this alone, and I ask for the private sector and civil society leaders to work with us to achieve our shared ambition under the global goals. The political will is there, and so is the leadership. These must now emerge in all other areas of our national life, including the private sector. I believe events like this are positive signals that such sentiment is indeed emerging and, in fact, flourishing. Thank you for your participation and passion. I wish you all a very productive summit ahead, and I am very much looking forward to the next session. Thank you.